Hey viewers, thanks for viewing back. So real quick, we just made a super long video. And not only are we not sourdough professionals, we're also not YouTube professionals. So we just made a really long video of the step 2 of this first sourdough process that we did not actually hit the record button. So this video is gonna be explaining what we just did because it went really well and I don't wanna recreate it because I can't undo what we already mixed. So with that said, before I get into that, I do want to confess, because this is not actually going to be our first sourdough starter, because last night when we made our leaven, so that means we took some out of our running starter, put it into our separate jar, which was a 25 grams of starter and 100 grams of water and 100 grams of flour, and then that was to grow overnight, and that's what we used for the recipe that I'll talk about. But before that, after we did that, after you discard, you have to feed your starter. What we're doing, doesn't mean it's right or wrong, but what we're doing is a 1-to-1-to-1. So example, if there's 100 grams of starter, then we do 100 grams of water and 100 grams of flour. Well, last night when we did that, it started to puff up and get bigger and bigger, and eventually was overflowing and it was up to here. And we freaked out because we don't know what we're doing. And I went online, and like everything I'm learning, there's 100 different ways to correct whatever you did. So it says, you killed it, throw it away. It says, put it in the fridge. It said, just take a big scoop out and throw that away. Well, instead my wife said, well, why don't we just make a loaf of bread? So we looked for another recipe, which we will talk about in another video, because so far it's coming out great. But we took another recipe that was like an overnight recipe, because it was 11 o'clock at night when this was all happening. My leaven wasn't moving at all. So I just said, okay, that's gonna have to wait till tomorrow. So what we did was we made this other recipe, which if you pan over here, this was the loaf of bread we just pulled out of the oven about 10 minutes ago. It actually looks pretty awesome. It smells absolutely delicious. So we'll see, we'll cut into this in a little bit. And if it does work out, I will make another video explaining how we did that, because that was really an emergency situation and it was pretty easy. So back to the real
Different
video.
recipe.
Different recipe, whole different scenario. So video for another time. So we're gonna pretend that didn't happen. We're gonna focus this as our first go at this. Gotta have coffee. If you don't have coffee, then you get a cup of coffee, because you can't make sourdough bread without drinking coffee. That's a pro tip. Okay, so back to this. So again, everything has already been put in the bowl, but I'm gonna walk us through it. So our leaven, before it looked like this, it was actually full, overflowing, and the paper towel I had on it from last night's video was puffed up. It looked amazing. It had tons of little air bubbles, kind of like this, but even more, which I think is a good thing, because I think that is what makes your dough really airy. We'll find out once we make this loaf today. So with that, we're gonna take 200 grams of the leaven, 310 grams of water, 400 grams of flour, 50 grams of wheat flour, and 12 grams of salt. So I had all that pre-measured, and then I did walk us through how to use the scale, which is gonna be a little bit hard right now, but I will just kind of show you with this can just how it works, because in case you haven't used a scale before, because as my wife and I learned, you know, we're used to cups and ounces and baking, and now this is all measured in grams, which is a little different. It's actually easier, but different to learn. So when you turn on your scale and you put an object on it, we'll use this, it tells you how much this object weighs. So we have 247 grams. Well, if we wanted to start adding things to this, what we do is we hit this little, I think it's tar, maybe it's tare. Regardless, when you hit that button, it goes to a 0. So now it's reduced the grams of what's on there. So if we were to start putting things in, we'll just do an example real fast here. So let's just say we needed 50 grams of water in this jar. What we're gonna do, actually I'm not gonna use this jar because that has stuff in it and then it's gonna be a mess. So let me reset this real quick, sorry. Okay, so we need 50 grams of water. We're gonna dump some in. And as you dump it in, you're gonna see that that's gonna go up. So right now we have 26 grams. 37 grams. You just kind of keep going until now we're at 51, pretty close. And then let's say the next ingredient was 10 grams of something. If you hit that little tar button again, it brings us back to 0. So now we can put 10 grams in. And then you just keep doing that, and that's how you build whatever your recipe is. So for this recipe, again, it was 310 grams of water, which we warmed up a little bit past room temperature. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but we're gonna say it's right because that's what we're trying today. 200 grams of the leaven, which we put in there. 400 grams all-purpose flour, 50 grams wheat flour, and 12 grams of salt. So that's all been put in this bowl. I don't want to uncover it right now, but once it goes in the bowl, we stir it together. And we'll try to make a video in the future, but when you stir it together, it just looks like a lot of flour and not much anything else because there's so much flour in there. It's amazing when you make these sourdough breads, it's all flour and a little bit of liquid. So you gotta kind of stir it together. It makes this kind of rustic looking, I don't even know. It almost looks like if you took sand before you made a beach sandcastle. It's just like a mixture of wet and dry. Once you get to that point, then you get your hands wet. Gotta get them wet. Because last night when we made that loaf, I didn't get them wet and it was like, what do I do? And it was just goop everywhere. So well, luckily we didn't film that one. But once you get your hands wet, you go in there and you just kind of squish it and squash it. So it's called the squishy squashy. That's the sourdough term, I think. And then once you get about 2 to 3 minutes done, it kind of looks like a little bit of a round loaf, but it's definitely not smooth. It's still very rough and rustic looking. And that's what we're gonna do. Once we get to that point, we put a lid on it. That's where we're at right now. And we're gonna let it sit for 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, then we're gonna do the first series of stretches, which we'll show you guys that. And we'll see how that goes. Last night with the other loaf, kind of didn't go probably how it's supposed to go, so we'll see if this one goes a little bit better. But then after that 30 minutes, then we'll go into the next stage and we'll show you that. Outside of that, I think that's main stuff that we missed in the first video. Obviously it's Saturday, so I'm in much different attire than last night. Cool thing about this sourdough is you come home from work and you and your spouse just have fun, or on a weekend, you can do it while you're lounging around. So with that said, we are now on the second step of our, what I've learned it's called the fermenting process. So we've done our leaven last night, we let it sit overnight. We did our video where all the ingredients were put together and mixed into a bowl. And now we're gonna take that bowl out. It sat for 30 minutes, a little over 30 minutes, and we're going to now stretch it. And what that stretching is supposed to do is give strength to the dough, which that allows it to rise properly. And from what we're learning, I believe it's supposed to give it that nice airy sourdough texture. So we're gonna see how that goes. And this is our first step of that process. So I'm gonna pull out the bowl where we had it stored in the microwave. Not on, just in there. Gets a little bit warmer in there. And it now looks like this. So it's still not very pretty looking. That's kind of how, so I'm gonna stretch it, and that's gonna, like I said, build the strength to it. So we're gonna take, it's really sticky. I wonder if I should get my hands a little wet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe.
All right, just a little bit. Okay, so we're gonna stretch it now. We're gonna go underneath. We're gonna pull it up to as far as it will stretch itself. And we're gonna fold it over like this.
Maybe it goes like this a little bit.
Okay, and we're gonna go like this a little bit and pull it that way. And then we're gonna go like this a little bit.
And that's about 8 inches?
Yep, about 8 inches up. And I'm just,
is it stretching well or is it breaking?
It's both. It's a little bit. Let's just go through this because yeah, this is a learning experience for all of us. I mean, again, we're not professionals. We're not instructing you how to do it. We're just going online and trying to find the most simple recipes and ones that I feel like you could do if you work on the weekends. It's not a overly time consuming one.
That's fine enough.
Yeah, and then we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna kind of scoop this and we're gonna fold it and flip it. And then we're gonna, I don't know if that's part of the deal, but okay. And then boom, and then okay, and then we're gonna have kind of a little dough roll. Okay, and then we're gonna let that sit for 30 more minutes, and then when we come back, we're gonna do that exact same thing again. So that tip that we're learning, like the stuff that you see on my hands, don't wash it down your sink because just like we've learned in these starters, it expands. So if you wash this down your drain and then it gets stuck somewhere in your pipe and then water starts to grow it, it actually could expand in your pipes. I'm not a plumber, I don't know if that's actually true, but that's another thing I read online. So what we've been doing is just dipping our hands in a bowl of water, getting it off and throwing the water in our garden. We did our first 30 minutes letting it ferment. We did our first round of stretching. Then we put it back into our dark place for another 30 minutes. It's actually been more like probably 45 minutes, maybe even 50 minutes, because I had to run to the store and get a bread thermometer or a food thermometer, because we learned that the temperature of your dough is very important. So in case you didn't know that, our goal is to have the actual dough be between 75 and 80 degrees. So we're gonna try to see what our dough is once we get done stretching it for the second time. So pop this lid off. That is what it looks like right now. So we're gonna go ahead and stretch it again on our stretches. Now we're gonna do just kind of fold it over, and we're gonna get it into its little dough-shaped area. So it should be a little bit more of a shaped ball versus how it has been looking. So that looks pretty good. There's that. And then we're going to use our meat thermometer, and I want to see what the actual dough temperature is. It looks like it's a little bit sticky still, which I don't think it's supposed to be as sticky as that, but that's okay. Right now we're at 77 degrees, so that's great because we want to be between 75 and 80. Mix it, put it away for 30 minutes, pull it out, stretch it, put it away for 30 minutes, pull it out, stretch it. That's where we're at right now. So now we're actually going to cover it and put it away for 2 hours. So it's 1:15. So at 3:15, we will come back, we will pull it back out, and then we're going to show you how to take it from the fermenting stage into the proofing stage. And we'll talk about these proofing baskets and how they work and all that good stuff. And one more quick thing, in some up and coming videos, not today, but soon, we're going to do some videos. My wife's going to make videos about the discard. So the discard is if you are going to do anything with your starter and you have to discard, so take out.
We have to
starter.
feed that one if you want to take out and show right now.
Okay, yeah, we'll go ahead and do that. And this would be what the discard would be. So it's coming out of that, going into a separate jar. So instead of throwing this in the garbage or using it to start another starter, you can actually do discard recipes. So my wife is going to make the discard recipe videos, and those things can be pancakes, crepes, cookies, all kinds of cool stuff. So those videos are to come. All right, so now we're on to stage 1, 2, 3. We'll call it stage 4, but it's stage 3 of the fermenting process, but stage 4 from the very beginning of making the leaven from last night. It's been sitting for what should have been about 2 hours per what we saw as a recipe online that we're trying to follow. That if you guys comment, or I'll make sure to put something below that kind of gives you guys the breakdown of what this recipe all entails. But unfortunately, we went a little over 2 hours. It's been about 2.5, which is okay. But in the meantime, while this was sitting, as we talked about before, the discard that we used, Annie went ahead and made some discard pancakes. So these came out really fluffy, super tasty. So she'll make a video of how to make these in the future, but that's just using the discard from the sourdough. Instead of throwing it away or using it for a new starter, you can make these beautiful pancakes. So that was awesome. So now that that's all done and we've cleaned up our kitchen, we're gonna now move back into our video. So this is our dough. It should have rised by about 50 to 60%, and that's what we're at now. So clearly that's much bigger than it was before. It's got a little jiggly to it, which is good. And then it should be pretty good when you touch it like that from what I've seen online. That's a thing they do, and that looks like what it looks like online. So now what we're gonna do is take some flour, and we're gonna go ahead. So this is now the proofing stage. So we've done the fermenting, and now we're going to proof it, and this takes 90 minutes as well. So far, in case you haven't watched the past videos and you're just jumping ahead and you're on this video, we've done a 30-minute fermenting with a stretch, then another 30-minute fermenting with a stretch, and then a 2 hour, in our case, about 2.5 hours of it sitting. And now we're at the proofing stage. So what that means is we're gonna put it in this proofing basket. We bought these on Amazon. They're like kind of a rubber or silicone. I've seen some that are wicker with a cloth. I've seen some that are like a fake wood. So I don't know if they're different, but this is what we've been learning with. We have to kind of prep it. So what we do to prep it, we'll actually do that first. What we do to prep it is you take a little bit of water and you just spritz it in there. And then you're gonna use rice flour, is what they say online. We're gonna use semolina flour. I think that's how you say it. Google says it's the same thing as rice flour. So we just take a little bit of this and you just kind of put it in there. Actually, when I say a little bit, be pretty liberal, because you want to get in all the little grooves, because when you put your dough in there, it will actually stick in those little grooves. And the cool thing is when you pop it out, which we'll see in about an hour and a half from now, you'll see the little ribs on the outside of your dough, which it kind of gives a pretty texture. I have learned that on some of the online stuff, it actually shows people putting a cloth cover in here, and then you don't get those ribs, which I guess it's just a preference thing. So I'm just gonna pack this down a little bit, and then I'm gonna dump it over like this and just kind of tap it out so all that extra stuff kind of comes out of there. There we go. And then I'm gonna shoot over here and get rid of that. Okay. And then I'm also gonna put just a little bit of flour in there too, just to really make sure it doesn't stick, because the last thing we'd wanna do is all this work and then have the bread not pop out, so. All right, so that gives our proofing basket ready to go. So now what we're gonna do is take it back to our big glob of dough. We're gonna put some flour on top of there. And then we're gonna put some flour on our prepping cutting board. We don't want anything to stick, okay? And then we also want some well-floured hands. That's what I've learned is a good step in this part because it doesn't stick to you. So we're ready to rock and roll. I'm gonna get my scraper, which came with this kit on Amazon. So you get one of these, and all that really does is kind of let you get down behind here and let you scrape out this big, lovely blob. So we can get her or him out of here and onto our prepping station, just like that. Okay, so now this is our, I don't know, our sourdough the proof. So here we go. We're gonna do the same kind of stretching technique, but now it's much bigger as it was before. But our first step is we're gonna stretch this way. Oh yeah, this feels much better. If you guys did watch the videos prior to this one, you could remember that it was not doing this, so that looks cool. So we're gonna kind of lightly push that over. And another thing that I've been learning, again, there's so many different ways to do this, but you can be a little bit gentle now, because if you get kind of crazy with it, I guess it kind of kills the air that's in it. So I don't know if that's true or not, but we're gonna say it is. So I did my one fold. Now I'm gonna pull my sides like that. And then we're gonna fold, whoop, we're gonna fix that. We're gonna fold this guy in and stick him. And then we're gonna do the same thing over here and stick him. I'm gonna use this one. So I'm gonna scrape this up, boom, right into my hand. And then I'm gonna put this seam side down.
Seam side up.
Seam side up, there you go. Right into this basket. And then we're gonna, yeah, now it's gonna sit for 90 more minutes. And then after 90 minutes, we're gonna take this out. We're gonna scour or score the top of it. And then that's gonna be what we're gonna put in the oven to go to the sourdough club. And it's gonna party and make something pretty, hopefully. All right, so now we're on our last step, which we have proofed the dough. We've waited 90 minutes since we put it away to finish its proofing. So it should have rose, and we should be able to move on to our next steps. Let's check it out.
I think it's risen.
Yes, it has. That's risen right there. Look at that. That looks gorgeous. So before when we put it in, it was about midway up here. So now it's got this nice jiggly to it, and it's got a nice rebound. So when you push on it, it kind of bounces back up. It doesn't deflate. That, from what I've seen online, looks pretty awesome. So if you guys follow along with this video as we learn together, if yours looks like this, comment down below so we know if this recipe is kind of a fail-safe. But I think right now, from what we've done, it's been very simple and it looks great. So the next step we're gonna do is we're gonna get this bad boy in the oven. So we've been preheating our oven to 550 degrees, it's very hot. 500 degrees, because 550 would be insane. So 500 degrees. One thing real quick before we even get into this, we are using a a roasting stone that we've had from Pampered Chef a long time ago, but they make other types of stones. What I've noticed online, and Annie's noticed online, is a lot of people use Dutch ovens. Some people use a do-it-yourself, which we're not going to go into, but you could just use a cookie sheet and you use lava rocks and towels with boiling water to create steam. You can look up YouTube videos on how to do that, but because we've had these roasting stones, we have a dish and a dome that goes on top of it. That's what we're going to try to use. I tried to look up videos, Annie tried to look up videos that do roasting stones work, because we don't have a Dutch oven and we didn't want to buy a Dutch oven. We could not find any videos. So we're gonna learn real fast if it works or not, because we're gonna try it right now with this recipe. So we have that preheating at 500. We're gonna get this thing ready to go, and then we're gonna pull our roasting stones out. We're gonna lower it down to 485, and then we're gonna go ahead and bake it for the first 18 minutes. So first step is first, we're gonna go ahead and lay some of this semolina flour again on this parchment paper. Okay, lay a little bit of this down. That's just gonna keep it from sticking. Cool. All right, so now this is gonna plop hopefully right out and not stick to here because we prepped it right. See if that's gonna come out of there. Nope.
Oh no! What do you do?
Now we're going to score it, but that actually looks pretty cool. It's a little bit close on the parchment paper there, but I think we're gonna just try it because I'm not sure how to move that because it's pretty dang big. Okay, so the next step is the scoring. We have this little fancy object we got online. You could also use a pair of scissors and just snip it. It really doesn't matter. But what we're gonna do is, it's a little razor blade. I think it's called a lamb or a lamb. A lamb. So I'm just gonna pick an area and just cut into it. I don't know if there's a right way to do this, but I know you need to do it to let the air, or to let it expand when it cooks, because what happens is when it cooks, it's gonna rise, and if it doesn't have space to separate, it's going to blow out the sides. So that's what that's for. I'm just gonna do another little cut over here. Okay, so that was a little bit defeating, but we went ahead and got it in the oven. We did it at 480 for 18 minutes.
485.
485 for 18 minutes. And then we took the lid off, which is right here, and we reduced it to 465 for 25 minutes. And we're coming up on the last 30 seconds of that. And then once that's over, we'll pull it out and see. But going in, it appeared like it was deflating. I don't know. Obviously, this is our first go at this, so let's see what it comes out and looks like. And then once it comes out, I do want to test the temperature of it. Let's go ahead and pull this out of here. Ooh. Looks pretty good to me. Smells really good.
Wow.
That puffed up. I mean, it was pretty much a hockey puck going in, which is why I cried. But I think my tears may have lifted it, and it looks pretty good. Where we scored it, that's where those kind of opened up. Let's go ahead. Do you think I'm okay to poke it without like it going?
I have no idea.
All right, we'll find out together. We gotta figure out what temperature it is. What I saw online is 205 is kind of the goal, so we'll see.
If we hear a big pop.
And that's not fun, but yeah, let's find out. So we're at 201. Nice hollow knock. And there is your first loaf ever.
Nice.
It looks pretty good.
We'll see.
It's a little bit, maybe a little bit squished, but not bad. Alrighty, so it's been just about 2 hours since we've let it rest, so it's ready to be cut into. Dip it in some olive oil, balsamic vinegar, and garlic spread, and see how it tastes. It's got a nice crust to it. Get my knife in there. All right, so there's our inside. Take a look at that. Looks pretty nice. Pretty airy. And then let's just take a little piece off here. Oh yeah, that's pretty.
Is it goopy?
No, it's nice and airy. But I think this is a great recipe for our first sourdough doers, because this was pretty easy. Again, this was our first sourdough attempt and it came out, I think, really well. So we'll do a little bit more in-depth review, but thank you guys so much for viewing this whole video from start to finish. And the goal of these videos, they're not to show you the professional, edited, this is how you do it and this is how the beautiful outcome comes out. It's really to show you the start to finish and all the in-betweens and really make people comfortable to be able to tackle this, because there's so many things you read online, so many different ways to do it, and it's really overwhelming. And I want to try to encourage people to do the most simplistic approach, which is what we did today. And I think it came out great. So thanks so much, and subscribe, like, and hopefully you follow along on my next videos to come. Thanks everybody.